Today is Thursday.
And this is a throwback.
Today is Thursday, and this is a throwback. Is an obnoxiously long hashtag and a nostalgic rich talk show presented by the Peridot. Today we have a very special Juneteenth episode. According to the National Museum of African American History and Culture, Juneteenth marks our nation's second Independence Day. Although it has long been celebrated in the African American community, this monumental event was largely unknown to most Americans. On Freedom's Eve, or the eve of January 1st, 1863, the first watch night services took place. On that night, enslaved and free African Americans gathered in churches and private homes all across the country, awaiting news that the Emancipation Proclamation had taken effect. At the stroke of midnight, prayers were answered as all enslaved people in Confederate states were declared legally free. Union soldiers, many of whom were black, marched onto plantations and across cities in the South, reading small copies of the Emancipation Proclamation, spreading the news of freedom in Confederate states. The Emancipation Proclamation, declared by President Abraham Lincoln in 1863 during the American Civil War, only freed slaves in Confederate states. Only through the 13th Amendment did emancipation become national policy. The 13th Amendment was passed by the Senate on April 8, 1864, and by the House on January 31st, 1865. The joint resolution of both bodies that submitted the amendments to the states for approval was signed by President Abraham Lincoln on February 1st, 1865, ratified on December 6, 1865. It was the first of the three Reconstruction Amendments adopted between 1865 and 1870, following the American Civil War. The 13th Amendment states neither slavery nor involuntary servitude, except as a punishment for crime whereof the party shall have been duly convicted, shall exist within the United States or in any place subject to their jurisdiction. However, it was with this exception, as a punishment for crime whereof the party shall have been duly convicted, that a new form of slavery developed in the 20th century. After the Civil War, black codes and other discriminatory laws made it easy for local officials to arrest African Americans and other poor residents for minor infractions. Not everyone in Confederate territory would immediately be free. Even though the Emancipation Proclamation was made effective in 1863, it could not be implemented in places still under Confederate control. As a result, in the westernmost Confederate state of Texas, enslaved people would not be free until much later. Freedom finally came on June 19, 1865, when some 2,000 Union troops arrived in Galveston Bay, Texas. The Army announced that the more than 250,000 enslaved Black people in the state were free by executive decree. This day came to be known as Juneteenth by the newly freed people in Texas. Dr. Opal Lee, an American activist, author, and educator who is widely recognized as the grandmother of Juneteenth, spearheaded the grassroots campaign to have the end of slavery officially recognized as a U.S. federal holiday. At 89 years old, she began walking from her home in Fort Worth, Texas, to Washington, D.C. Her walks were in 2.5 mile increments to symbolize the 2.5 years it took for the news of the Emancipation Proclamation to reach enslaved people in Texas. Her petitions, which garnered over 1.5 million signatures, culminated on June 17, 2021, when President Joseph Biden signed the Juneteenth National Independence Day Act that established June 19th as a federal holiday. Dr. Opal Lee was awarded the Presidential Medal of Freedom in 2024, the highest civilian honor in the United States. Well, that concludes today's show. I hope you enjoyed. Don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe to the Peridot Network on YouTube. Listen to the Peridot's playlist on Spotify and follow the Peridot Net on Instagram and TikTok.
Today is Thursday.
And this is a throwback.